Hey everybody, Doug Tricarico from the Tricarico team at Houlihan Lawrence. I'm here today with Dave Colagiovanni from Super Home Inspections. We're going to do a pre-sale inspection. The owner had asked him to come by and take a look before the house is sold. So come take a tour. Dave, so what are some things you check out in a recently renovated home? Like, what are things that buyers should be aware of?
So in a recently renovated home, we're gonna check this, everything that we would check normally in a regular house that wasn't renovated, and that's going to be electrical, plumbing, looking for water intrusion. Here I'm using thermal imaging to looking for any plumbing leaks or any sort of lack of insulation in our exterior walls. I use a couple different tools. This is a thermal imaging, all right, and it's just a really scientific way and cool way of looking at temperature, okay, and it can give us some really cool or warm spots in our wall here, and I'm looking for a big difference here. A lot of times you can see some of the studs in the wall because wood is just a poor insulator, so that's what you're seeing there. But then other than this, we're going to be checking outlets. All right, so when checking for this electrical wiring, we're making sure that the installer had correctly wired this outlet, and there's 3 wires behind here. You got a ground, a hot connection, and a neutral connection. All right, and all these connections can actually be reversed in some which way, and this blue indicator here tells me that this is actually wired correctly, so this is good. Now what I can also do right now is, because we're within 6 feet of a water source, we want to make sure that this is protected by a GFCI. So I'm going to test it here. And what's happened is this outlet is actually connected to that one right there in a series, and it did pop. So I'm going to come over here and we're going to reset it, which should restore power right back to the electrical wiring.
One thing I notice on a lot of my inspection reports comes up is reverse polarity. And it's one of these things that buyers always kind of freak out about. It's not really a big correction, but it always seems to be a point of contention in settling the home inspection and getting it to close. What exactly is reverse polarity?
So reverse polarity is this. You got these 2 wires that go behind this outlet. You got the hot and the neutral connection. Now the installer might put the neutral connection, to the hot side and vice versa. Basically still giving power to the outlet, but with those wires reversed, it actually runs any sort of motor in the reverse direction. That includes hair dryers, vacuums, even laptop computers, essentially just burning them out, sometimes very quickly.
So what is the correct fix to that? It's just switching the wires?
It's just switching the wires.
So it's very simple fix.
Very simple fix.
Just always comes up.
I'm going to test just a few more outlets here, and this tester right here, it's also giving me voltage as well. This is carrying 120 volts to this outlet right here, which is a good amount of power. If this is less than 115 volts, sometimes with little less power, you're charging your cell phone less quick. We're going to get into our plumbing. All right, and so what we're looking for is we're looking for functional pressure, and we're looking for hot water as well as functional drainage. Okay, so I'm actually going to get the stopper in here. I'm going to try to fill this up. Okay, now we're getting hot water, which is good. And then as we shut this off, we're going to take a look underneath our sink. This is just called an S trap here, or a P trap, and this plumbing is in really good condition. Okay, no previous signs of leaks, and and then I'm just looking at the installation of everything here. You want to see this trap here. This hose is coming from our dishwasher. This is correct. And then we have our hot and cold water. We actually have your shutoffs down here. This is actually done really well. And now, as far as plumbing goes, we're also looking for, plumbing leaks. This is one area you could find it, but you also could find it in any of our ceilings and walls that you might have plumbing running through. So I actually used a flashlight here in conjunction with, with the thermal imaging, and I'm looking for any sort of water staining coming from our roof or any sort of plumbing. And I'm not getting any sort of leaks here. Again, I'm looking for like some sort of ring or discoloration in some of our ceiling or our wall paint.
Now, one feature a lot of people look for in a home is a fireplace. What goes into properly maintaining a fireplace, and what should a buyer look for in the beginning? Because it could be a potential major expense.
Yeah, so what you see here is, we're looking at a really clean fireplace. So this fireplace, which I can tell has been used before, with wood, is actually really clean. These can be cleaned out by yourself, or you can get a chimney sweep. All right, so the maintenance here again is just to making sure that when you do create fires, that there's a dampener here, that this dampener is in the open position, which basically eliminates any sort of rollout of smoke, which I'm not seeing here. Into our lintel here, our mantle. And so this all looks really good. You're gonna get some rusting in here, just from the cooler environment you have. But this looks fine. This sort of, this grout in here can deteriorate, and that looks good. So down here we have a clean out. Basically that goes, into our flue. That looks fine. And now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna test this dampener door. The dampener door is what opens and shuts, or allows, gases to get into the flue. So right now that is to the closed position. The key here is making sure that this works, because because they're metal, they like to get stuck. So right now this is in the open position, and we're gonna return it to the closed position. And that would be our test there. You see a little bit of soot coming here, so this could probably, eventually in a couple years could use another cleaning. But this looks really good here.
Most important parts of a home inspection, because most people don't come up here. What are some things that you look for in an attic that could be major or even just minor issues that need to be corrected?
So the attic inspection basically completes the roof inspection. All right, after I've gotten onto the roof and have done my assessment there, looking at what we have underneath is what we call sheathing, as well as, our rafters and our truss system. And so we're looking for signs of failure here. That could be cracking, any sort of improper notching of any electrical wires going through this. I'm looking for water intrusion in here as well. So kind of the best tool I got for that is just, is this probe here, and I'm looking for any sort of wood rot here, which means that, the shingles are not performing, water's getting underneath there. This is a great environment for any sort of mold growth, so we're looking for things like that. But really, as far as the roof structure goes, I'm looking for any sort of bowing of these rafters here. Not seeing any of that in today's inspection. And then after you end up from going up top, we're then going to get into basically our ceiling structure. And the same thing there, we have our ceiling joists. We also have insulation, so we're looking for complete insulation, as well as any sort of signs of failure of these joists here. Wood rot could find its way into these joists as well. Other than that, I'm trying to get a sense of the humidity that you would have in an attic, okay? Because all attics, need to have some sort of ventilation. You get it from your gable vents, you get it from your soffit vents, as well as through the ridge of the roof. And so I'm checking to make sure we got proper airflow, proper ventilation. The temperature of your attic space should really be pretty close to what the temperature is outside. And now also what's going on in this attic is we've got some of our plumbing vents right here. Just looking for a proper installation of these ventings right here. Okay, and I'm gonna kind of follow it. This right here is our main plumbing vent. This would be going through the roof. This is some of these vents that you see on, through the shingles. And looking for proper connections here, because sometimes I have seen these disconnected, cracked, broken, but this all looks really good. And what we also have up here as well is our air handler, for the central AC. And so what I'm also gonna do is gonna test this unit as well. I'm gonna be looking at the filter as well as the serial number to get the age of this unit, and you know, just looking for regular and proper maintenance of this unit as well.
AC is something that a lot of people want, but what goes into properly maintaining a HVAC system?
HVAC systems should be, need to be maintained like every 1 to 2 years. You know, calling a technician to come out here to basically check your condensate lines, your filters, your electrical connections, as well as see this unit right here is taking gas. These connections all need to be really good and snug, because we don't want any gas leaks into the house at all. You know, as well as this unit also needs to stay level, because what this thing is producing more than anything is actually condensate. There's water, and there's 2 lines. There's a primary and a secondary condensate line. If the primary line is not working or is clogged, the secondary line opens up, and now you got a whole bunch of water into that drip pan. And with not a lot of homeowners coming up into this space, getting a professional to do so is really the most important thing you're gonna do here. Okay, so for the bathroom inspection here, you know, we're gonna go ahead and test this, you know, all of our windows. You know, as far as testing windows, it's opening them up, making sure that they stay, closing them, making sure you can sort of relock these. You know, pretty simple test there. Now we're gonna get into our tub area here. And so the same thing that we did in the kitchen, we're gonna do in the bathroom. And that means we're running water, looking for that functional flow, that pressure. We need that. You know, making sure hot water is getting here quickly. We go ahead and we're gonna test some of the mechanisms we have in the shower. Okay, using the shower head. And then we're gonna turn that off here. And then we also got our tub stopper. All these things are really important, especially when you have children. When bath is a pretty essential thing you do in the house. So, and after we do that, again, we're gonna go ahead and look for that functional drainage of the shower area. And hearing some of that gurgling noise is actually really important. That lets you know that S-trap is working properly. And then just getting into some of our tile here, I kind of, you know, I'm hitting the tile here because I'm trying to see if any of the sheetrock behind this is sort of rotting away, which means water's getting behind this. But we're not getting any of that. Okay, and we're just looking for, again, just proper installation, you know, good sealant, as well as these fixtures are installed correctly, not loose. And then we're going to take a look at our ceiling. And we've got some venting into this space as well. And in conjunction with this window, you're gonna have the proper ventilation in here as well. So this is all looking really good. In this basement here, actually, you know, we have gas coming into this house. Sometimes we have oil as our main, you know, heating source. And so what I'm gonna do before I get into any of our furnaces or boilers, you know, what I'm gonna do is, you know, this is, you know, this is my gas meter right here. It's a gas detector. And I start to bring it throughout any of these joints here where the gas is coming in, and making sure that, you know, this isn't leaking at all. Probably one of the more important things we do as far as safety goes, you know, making sure that all these connections are really snug. You know, if they're not, the fix there is just to, you know, have a plumber come in and re-tighten some of these joints in here. As well as in the basement, we're gonna go back to our ceiling and our walls, looking for any sort of discoloration. I used a flashlight because this is what allows me to look for any sort of discoloration, especially even around some of our window wells here.
Now, in a renovated home, people can easily hide things. How are you able to kind of see things that are hidden, especially when people flip them? Sometimes they cut corners. What are some of the common things that you'll see that somebody you shake your head at?
So sometimes during the home inspection, you know, we'll have, and the home inspection is all dependent on and what I can visually see. And here we actually got a really good look at all of our walls. There's no couches pushed up, any shelves pushed up against any wall that I can't access. So this is a really prime example of what a home inspection should be like. But yeah, certainly there are, times that, walls and ceilings are covered, you can't get to it, and if I can't inspect it, it could be problematic in the future. If I can't help you figure out that there's any sort of leaking or anything broken behind that wall. Okay, so in this room here, we have our hot water heater. Hot water heaters are good for 12 to 15 years, so I'm gonna be looking at when this was last installed. And other than that, I'm looking for just proper installation of the venting, as well as insulating these, these lines. Looking for our connections here. And all this looks really good. You'll know that these are ready to go when they start to leak throughout the bottom, as well as this is a pressure relief valve here that will discharge water if this is over pressurized. And I'm not seeing any of that here. And also on this hot water heater here, because it's connected to your gas line, you can actually adjust the hot temperature of your water right at the bottom of this unit here. So we're looking at this block foundation wall, and in here we're also looking for your typical cracking here. A lot of times in these block walls you can see step cracking or horizontal or vertical cracks. Not seeing any in this foundation wall.
Now, what does that typically determine? I know some cracks are worse than others.
Yeah.
So the step crack, is that as bad as a vertical crack?
No, so both the vertical crack and the step cracking are both very similar. It's basically there's a settling of one side of the wall or the other. The cracking that I'm looking for is the cracking that is basically going through the horizontally through this wall. That would know that this wall was starting to basically buckle. And when the foundation wall turns this way, that's when it starts to shorten, and it'll start to bring any of our sills down with it, which could lead to some structural damage. And so the horizontal crack is what I'm looking for. I'm not seeing it here. Other than that, I'm looking for efflorescence. Efflorescence is basically water that is pushed through this block, depositing a white minerally substance on the other side of it. And because we're kind of, above the grading of the outside of the house, you're not going to see it here. So this actually looks really good. Now I'm going to get into this electrical panel. First looking at just the installation and how the installer would have put this all together. Proper wiring. They actually have their meter inside the house. Typically you'd find these outside, but this is pretty neat. It'll keep it out of the elements, which is nice. They've used BX cable along with some Romex. And now what I'm looking for in this panel here is right now everything's in the on position. I'm going to note the amperage as well as making sure that everything is labeled. And now I'm going to take this panel cover off. I'm going to look at the wiring behind this panel, making sure that that's wired correctly as well.
Now, one of the most common questions a lot of people have is how much power is coming into the house? And is it enough to supply my needs or any future needs? Yeah. What's a way that you can determine and easily look for, because you as a trained eye are able to spot it pretty quickly. However, somebody else coming in is going to sit here and look all around and try to figure it out, then just guess.
Yeah. So 100 amps, this home has 100 amps. And my home has 100 amps. And I'm going to tell you what, it's enough power. A lot of people are looking for 200 amps. 200 amps was designed for homes that had electric baseboard heat, something that needed a lot of power. This home just has 100, and that's a perfect amount of power for a home this size. But what I will note here to the client is that this panel is completely filled up. So if you were to sort of bring in any electric, say you were to install a floodlight outside, and you'd have to rewire it here. This client might need a sub panel just because it's full.
Now, at that point, is it easier to put a sub panel or upgrade the power and put a 200 amp?
So you could upgrade this whole panel to a 200 amp panel. It'd give you more breaker space, but I think in this case a sub panel would be just fine.
The common thing that comes up is a double tap on the breaker. And again, it's something that creates a whole big stir because electrical and it could be serious, but is that necessarily a major fix? Is that something that's easily corrected?
So the double tap wire, which I'm not seeing in this panel here, basically means that, you know, when an electrician brings in power to this panel here, they need a breaker to, you know, to install that wire into. Now, sometimes, you know, when they don't have enough breakers, they will actually double tap or add two hot connections to one breaker. You know, it's part of, you know, the construction industry. It used to be very standard. They got rid of that. But the fix is very simple. You basically take the two wires, and before it enters that breaker, you would splice it just beforehand. And so the fix is very simple. You're either splicing it beforehand, or you're just adding another breaker so that every breaker has one hot connection going to it.
Not every panel's the same. I do know there are some panels that are immediately red flagged.
Here, it's a square D panel. Well, actually allows for these two wires to go in here. There is a brand of these panels called Federal Pacific. And now Federal Pacific, the problem with Federal Pacific panels is that they had lied to the UL rating. You see a whole bunch of UL ratings in here, and they didn't give correct data to that company, which essentially caused a lot of fires in those panels. Electricians won't work on them, and that's why they're immediate fixes. Okay, so now we're in the laundry room here, and you know what I'm going to identify here is what the dryer is using for a heat source. You either use gas or electric, and so I'm going to look at that connection here. Okay, they've got a 220 outlet in the back, you know, of that dryer there. And then we're also going to get into these connections here, making sure that these were just installed properly. This is our drain line here, making sure that these are level and they're not going to move anywhere. You know, and again, you know, in this room here, we're going to go back through just the normal procedure of looking for any sort of water intrusion, because there is plumbing behind this wall. What you'll notice in this, throughout this house here, is they have a lot of these access panels, and these are important to, you know, to look out as well, because mostly every time you're gonna have some sort of plumbing here, you know, with some sort of valve. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get into this.
I know a lot of fires start from the venting in a dryer.
Yep.
Like, what do you need to do to properly maintain a dryer? It's something that sounds very basic, but a lot of people kind of overlook it.
Okay, so making sure that these dryers don't cause any sort of fire hazard. It's because what's going to catch fire in this dryer is the lint that is caught, you know, from our lint collector here. Okay, and this dryer being brand new, you're not going to find any of that, but this does need to be cleaned very normally. I would say at least almost once every time you use this. Okay, now the other thing is you're going to have a connection which is going to take any of the that warm air that this dryer produces, and it's going to expel it to the outside of the house, and making sure that that dryer line, that venting, isn't clogged and has a straight shot into the back of this house.
I also notice a lot of times it's flex duct, so it could easily get crushed, and that's when you happen to get a lot of blockage, and then that hot air through there.
Yeah, so, you know, I'm looking at making sure that that line isn't too long, which is it's going to help you avoid any sort of the kinks that you have in those lines. And so again, another really you know, easy fix, and something that most homeowners need to pay attention to is certainly, you know, the connection of that dryer line, as well as, you know, looking for those, you know, any areas that they could block any sort of lint from getting to the outside.
A plumbing vent, that needs to be vented directly outside. That can't be tied into the venting of the house.
No. So, you know, New York State Standards of Practice wants to see that all venting of every individual system or component, including your HVAC as well as your dryer and bathroom and kitchen venting, goes out independently, you know, from that unit and not tying into anything else. And so what I did wanted to look into here was I took this access panel off. And so, you know, what you have here is basically a nice look into, you know, behind this wall here. And what we have down here is we have our sump pump. And so what we're looking for here is, you know, looking for, again, proper installation of our sump pump. This looks like it could be an injector pump as well. And, you know, making sure for proper installation there and that there's no, you know, leaks into this area as well. You know, these areas are susceptible to, you know, to pests and whatnot. You know, I'm not getting that, you know, in this sort of space here. But something to know that whenever you see these access panels, knows there's something behind it that's pretty important. Open them up every so often, take a look behind. You got any issues, you're gonna call you know, your local professional to take a look into that. Okay, now we're looking at yet another access panel. Always wanna know what's behind here. So initial assessment of these is just know what's behind it, know what the problem could be. Here we have our, you know, our water that's coming from the street. Which is also gives us access to our main water shutoff valve right here. And so we're just looking for making sure that nothing here is leaking. We're also looking for proper grounding of this as well. Again, looking for any pests, and we got a nice actually snapshot of our foundation wall. Again, still looking for those signs of failure. Not seeing them here, but again, just another important reason why, you know, you should always know what's behind these panels. A lot of our insurance companies, because I carry professional liability, is they don't want you going on the roof per se. And when we do it in like, this is a pretty low lying roof here, you can get
just
up
break
there.
your arm.
Yeah, but in any sort of high roof, it's just, you know, it's not worth it to, you know, to get up onto the roof. So this is a perfect solution to inspecting the entire roof without putting yourself in harm's way. And so what I'm looking at right now, you know, with this, you know, with the drone, is I'm gonna try to get as close as I can to this roof line. And I'm looking for, you know, looking for our vent caps as well as our gutters. And then we're gonna inspect this chimney as well. Looking for caps up there. And we can tell we got a little bit of a repair there, but I want to get into my gutters and take a look at that. And just making sure that there's no debris in there as well.
So one common place I know you have a lot of leaks is around the chimney. So what exactly can you look for, and how can you determine if water is going to get in there? And I know it's something you're going to have to fix every X amount of years.
Yes, so the flashing around the chimney, again, it's all about the installation of the flashing, okay? So there's two types of flashing. One would be, you know, your solid flashing where they're actually using, you know, like good solid building materials. And then there's also sealant, which it's like a black tar looking, you know, product that is really just a temporary fix as far as making sure leaks aren't getting in through any sort of the roof penetrations. You know, so yes, I am checking this flashing here. That flashing should go straight to the, you know, just underneath the shingles as well. And so I'm just looking for just proper installation of the flashing here.
What are some of the things on the exterior of the house should a buyer look for?
So what I'm pinpointing, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm looking at the sort of the lay of the land, all right? And that's how water diverts its way around your house. And so what I'm going to try to do right now is pinpoint some areas of the basement that be really susceptible to water intrusion. And you know, and so as I look at this property, and I can see it's pitched ever so slightly from the front to the back. All right, so water will kind of want to hang out in this area here. And this homeowner actually did a really good job of cutting this vegetation down, allowing for drainage to happen here. I'm looking at our window wells, making sure that water's not getting into these window wells. This all looks really dry. So that's good there. And so not only are we looking at how water diverts its way around the house, but also when water hits the roof, it gets into our gutters, and this also needs to get away from the foundation, and it does so by these gutter extensions. This one's going into the ground. That's what I'm really looking for. You know, sometimes you just see these diverter trays that just puts water you know, fairly close to the house, but this one's actually getting away from it pretty good.
Now, nobody wants water, but would you say is that's the number one thing that starts to deteriorate a house, and it starts with keeping the water away?
Yes. So the water intrusion is going to lead to a few things. It could lead to some sort of structural issues with the foundation structure. You know, in this house, it has the foundation blocks. It can cause settling of the footers underneath there. Too much water, too much saturation of the soil beneath it will cause that cracking there. But water intrusion also will contribute to any sort of mold or musty or increased humidity. And so making sure that water gets away from the house completely, or at least partially, is gonna make sure that, you know, we avoid situations like that. You know, as we work our way around the house here, I do wanna see a really nice slope towards the back of the house. Negative grading is when soil is actually pitched towards the house. And you can see here that, you know, when the contractor built this house, he graded the land, you know, and pitched it ever so slightly towards the back, avoiding that negative grade into the house. Because again, we want water to fall away from it as opposed to going to it. And so, you know, and you could see that this pitch is now coming towards the back of the house here. Still trying to work this way. Water will always take the, you know, the easiest route, you know, to wherever it's sort of pitching. And then even when we get to the driveway here, if water were to fall this way, even the driveway is pitched back towards the back of the property and not towards the garage. And then lastly, as you could tell, you know, again, we have some more of these gutters going into the ground, away from the house. And then, you know, looking at the condition of the stucco, this all looks like it's in actually really good condition. It is a first sign of water intrusion. Could be in, you know, into the side of the house here, but it looks like the homeowner has done a really good job of, you know, maintaining the exterior part of the house by really just controlling the water that works around it.
Well, thank you, Dave, for coming by today. I look forward to seeing the report and potentially have that for any potential buyers that are coming.
Great. Well, I'm glad to help you guys out today, and best of luck. So guys, once again, my name is David Colagiovanni, owner of Super Inspections. You know, we're located in Putnam County. We service, you know, the Hudson Valley and the lower Hudson Valley, as well as New York City. We do radon testing, mold inspections, and you know, as well as any termites and water testing as well. And give us a call anytime, and we'll be really willing to help you guys out. Thank you.
Now, one reason why I highly recommend Dave is he has all sorts of gadgets and components that really dig deep inside the house, as you saw. I know also you're heavily tied into radon.
Yeah.
So you have kind of the top of the line equipment in terms of testing for radon.
Yes.
So that's always something good to keep in mind.
Yeah, when I got into this industry, I knew that that tools were important, and when you dive further into what kind of tools you could have, I've always you know, reached for the probably the more expensive ones that I knew that I'd get a you know just good data from, and that's the radon monitoring kit that I use. That's different from, say, the charcoal canister test. And then we've got really expensive thermal imaging, and you know, I've just always gone for you know, the best of equipment so I could better serve my my clients.
I know it's always one thing to kind of tell the clients what's wrong with the house, but with a lot of this equipment, it allows you to show them, and it's fun for them because with the thermal imaging, they're able to walk around and kind of play around with it in a sense, and look as well while you're doing the inspection. And perhaps they see something and have a question, it's always good to use that as backup in explaining.
Yeah, because in the home inspection industry, New York State standards of practice would tell you that this is just a visual inspection. But I'll tell you what, when you got some good equipment in your hands, it becomes more than a visual inspection at that point.
You're really able to dissect the house.
Yes.
Well, that's one of the most important things that I think is why I recommend you to my clients, because you are able to fully dissect the house and break it down in a manner that's understanding to these buyers, especially when dealing with first-time home buyers. Something that is a crack that may not be a big deal, but they see a crack and freak out. Well, thank you again for coming by, and I look forward to seeing the report.